And I just don't see this team wanting to do that. I think, if the reports are true that they can get Ricky Rubio for $15 million or so a year for a 2 or 3 year deal, the way this team is made up, again, assuming you bring back Bogdanovich, that makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. It really does. To me, it looks like a really efficient offensive team with, yes, some defensive liabilities, but a really nice bench when you add in TJ Warren and whatever you do with the Victor Oladipo situation, whether it's bringing Wesley Matthews back, whether it's, if it is Edmund Sumner for a while, I don't know what the answer is there yet. I think that is a TBD situation, who will be the starting 2 on opening night. And maybe through, the next 24 hours, we'll learn that situation. But I would not rule out a trade for one of those many billion second-round picks they have for an Eric Gordon.
Right. And, Greg Doyle, you either love or hate Greg Doyle. I don't want to use the word hate because it's a strong word, but I disagree with him a lot. But one thing I can agree with him on, yesterday I heard him on a local radio station here in Indianapolis talking about why it's hard for not only the Pacers but Colts. Why is it hard for Indianapolis to get some A-list people like your Durants, like your Kawhis, and a lot of it is not just about money. It goes a lot deeper than that. We're in the Midwest. We don't have a skyline. We don't have water. And we're a red state. I guess it goes political too. So a lot of players are just like, yeah, if you're the Pacers, don't come talking. But the Pacers could definitely benefit from some of these A-list people. What are your thoughts on that? Like I said, I don't dislike Greg at all. I just don't agree with him a lot. But that's okay. That's okay. We're all Americans. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah. And that's what a columnist is for.
Right.
They hopefully make you think, and you either have an opinion one way or the other. And he does a nice job of that. He really does. I would agree with him. I find it kind of interesting because, when you talk about of the 21st century, right? Obviously we're young into the 21st century. You can probably name 3 athletes before you get to Peyton Manning as the most famous, popular, at least in America. Now, I'm not talking about worldwide because obviously that's LeBron. And then you have Tiger, and then you maybe have Lewis Hamilton, but or soccer, players. But Manning is pretty high up on that list, right? He played most of his career where? Mm-hmm. In Indianapolis. So I understand what people say, but at the same time, it can obviously be done. He made more off of endorsements than he did off of the Colts or the NFL. So it can be done. However, the Pacers are not in any situation to add a high-profile free agent because, frankly, and I don't want to be negative about it, but they're just not that good. They're not in a situation where Kevin Durant makes them a championship contender overnight because, by the way, Kevin Durant's going to miss an entire season. Klay Thompson coming here makes the Pacers very, very good. Does it make them as good as Toronto? Depending on, Leonard comes back, as of course what we're assuming. It probably makes them as good, but it doesn't make them the clear-cut favorite in the East, I don't think. I think there are very few players that would make the Pacers the best team in the NBA. And I think that's the type of situation they would need to be in to attract one of these type of players, because that's really one of the things they're looking for. The other thing they're looking for is the big market. The Knicks are going to get one of these guys because if they come in and win the Knicks a championship, they're going to build a statue for them. And you're going to be, in the biggest city in the world and all that nonsense with the Knicks. It's so high profile. The Pacers and Milwaukee and even to a lesser extent Toronto, they fight the same battle. It is media market size, and it's just a harsh reality. And I agree with Greg. I just don't think where the Pacers are right now, from from a win-loss standpoint, it wouldn't make much sense for one of these guys to come here, other than, of course, the financial thing. Because, again, keep my argument earlier, they would have to completely change their team to bring in just one of these guys. These other teams, like the Lakers, they've already got LeBron James. They've got Anthony Davis. They can bring in a third max player and really have something special, potentially. Like if D'Angelo Russell were to go back to the Lakers, which I've not heard that's even a possibility, but I mean, if you think about that, like suddenly that's a chance to be really an elite team. I'm not sure if you get one of those guys, the Pacers are elite. They're really good, and they're right up there with everybody in the league. But are they the clear-cut favorite? I don't think so. And when you add in market size, it's a harsh reality. It's the nature of the beast.
Well, absolutely. We're talking with Matthew Hicks. Been around the indie sports world for a long time, helping me play the Homer card. I know we're a national show, but we're tying in all the NBA free agency stories. There perhaps no bigger need that the Pacers need than a starting point guard. That's for sure. And there are many NBA veterans hitting the free agency that could fill that. We talked about Ricky Rubio, but what are your thoughts about Patrick Beverley and George Hill? What are your thoughts about them?
Yeah, again, I think you have to determine George Hill is no longer a starting point guard. He's a fine NBA player. But Beverley, to me, doesn't seem like an option in my head, but perhaps he is. Beverley, to me, again, almost fits worse than Rubio. Now, I know like a lot of fans, again, are down on Rubio, but his game to me makes a lot of sense to the Pacers. What he does, he's a guy that can score if he has to, but his job is to facilitate the other four guys on the court. And I think with what that starting lineup could look like, that just makes a lot of sense to me. He doesn't need to average more than 10 or 11 points a game, but if he's in the high, 8s and 9s assists per game, that's what you're looking for from him. So, to your point, Beverley, that to me is a score-first point guard that I'm not sure fits with what they're trying to do. Now, George Hill is interesting. If you're in a situation, and by the way, I've read that Milwaukee would like to bring him back. They just didn't want to guarantee his whole salary. But regardless, George Hill is interesting because rumor is they tried to bring him back last year. That money just didn't quite work out. And if you're not quite ready to declare Aaron Holiday the backup point guard, maybe you bring in George Hill. Or again, with the uncertainty of Victor Oladipo, is George Hill a guy you bring in to be essentially the third guard in the rotation? Are Holiday and Hill, would they be 3 and 4 in the guard rotation until Oladipo's back? That's an interesting thought. And again, I don't know where the Pacers are at right now with thinking about Oladipo. Are they thinking about Oladipo as somebody that's going to play in January, or are they penciling him in for opening night? Now, I think it would be foolish to pencil him in for opening night. I think you have to plan the first 2 or 3 months of the season. And what is that plan? Could George Hill be a part of that? Well, that could make sense. And again, here's a guy that's come off the bench here for the last couple of years for championship contenders. So this is not a foreign concept to him. And obviously he started here for years. And he started in San Antonio too. So, I mean, it's a situation where that would make some sense to me, again, if they're not quite ready to hand over the backup reins to Holiday yet, or maybe they see Holiday as a 2 here for a little while longer before they're ready to move him over to the 1 full time. And in the Bird years, positions were like so unimportant. They just like, hey, you're bringing the ball up. You're going to guard the other point guard, but we're not going to call you a point guard. You're just a guard. You're a forward. So I don't know where they are necessarily in that situation too. If it's just they want versatile guys, and boy, does George Hill fit that bill. A guy that can still D people up, can score. I mean, gosh, he upped his points per game in the playoffs, like 4 points over the regular season. I mean, he's still got it. There's no question there. He can still play. Beverly, to me, is not as much of a fit. The other guard for Milwaukee, Brogdon, is an interesting cat. Probably a little cheaper than Ricky Rubio, can score, can pass, defends well. He's a guy that you don't really hear a lot about, but a free agent that could be perhaps, on this team again in 24 hours that we may have not been on the radar, or maybe he was and we just don't know it.
We talk about this big cap space and this big purse and big wallet, if you will, that the Pacers have. And, historically, the restricted free agent market hasn't historically been something that the Pacers have really pursued. Maybe that changes this year. Let's, we talked a little bit about D'Angelo Russell, but there's Malcolm Brogdon, or, dare we say it,
right,
Terry Rozier.
Yeah, and again, the next 24, 36 hours are going to be so interesting because we're going to learn what other teams' plans are too. Kyrie Irving is a big domino. So when Irving signs away from Boston, do they chase a point guard or do they just go with Terry Rozier? Do they make him stay, or does Boston try to bring somebody else in at another position and have to renounce Terry Rozier and he becomes an unrestricted free agent? These are all things that will happen that are all possible. Or do the Pacers make a big offer on Rozier? And I think that's a possibility. I mean, do they make a big offer and make Boston match it or not? I think those are all interesting propositions,
Well, we'll see. We'll definitely see what happens over the next 24 hours. Let's kind of move over to the Colts real quickly. There, what do we know? Anything new and exciting from West 56th Street as we get ready for OTAs? And man, we're coming closer and closer to camp and closer and closer to preseason. It's just. It's only July. Come on, it's time to start football again, isn't it?
It's just crazy how quickly it all goes. And I've said before, this Colts team is going to be really good. Are they going to be good enough to win a Super Bowl? Well, listen, that's always very difficult. It's one and done in the tournament, and a bad day is a bad day. That's just the way it goes. But I think they're going to be pretty darn good. I really do. And to me, I'd be pretty surprised if they didn't win the division. But you never know how things go. People get hot, and that's the way it works sometimes. So we'll see. But I think with what's coming back and as this defense evolves and the offense kind of evolves, if you will, too, I expect this team to put up a lot of points and to be pretty stout defensively. There's going to be groups that give them trouble. And the division is seemingly better, right? I mean, we think the division is better. Houston's, all we know, is pretty good. Tennessee should be better, and Jacksonville gets rid of Blake Bortles. But we joke about Blake Bortles, but the reality of it is he actually played well against the Colts for the last two seasons. So, we like to kid about Bortles, but that actually may be a good thing for the Colts that he's gone because he has played pretty well against Indianapolis. So we'll see.
You sound like Donald Trump now. We will see.
We'll see.
U.S. women's soccer, they're going to take it all away. I mean, what a win against France.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They're just so good. I mean, they're just so good. I would be shocked if they didn't at this point, right? They just got 2 more games, right?
It's in the knockout round, according to guess. 2 more games. And I think they have England coming up next. I don't have it up here in front of me, but either which way,
that sounds right. But yeah, they're just so good. They're
Go
really
Team
good.
USA. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Matt Hicks, I appreciate you joining us today. Talk a little homework card with us. Are you still publishing your masterpieces? Where can people find
you? I don't really do a lot on there right now. Hickson05. It's going to be an interesting, 36, 48 hours for the Pacers. I mean, obviously, the off season is long, and a lot can happen. I mean, I remember several years ago, They made a late trade that, like 2 weeks before camp. I can't remember the pieces and parts of it, but